I'm Simon Cooper, and you can probably see I come from an era which is probably pre-man-made fabrics to a large extent. I was sort of born in the early 1950s, and I spent all my life working in farming. And I guess when I started farming, we were all working on mixed farms. And it wasn't organic, but it was probably a lot better than it is now for the amount of chemicals and things we're using. Um, the great thing with it, you were doing so many different things. You also learned a great deal. You had to do everything. You had to sort of be able to plant the crops, do all that. But if any electric work, you always did your own electric work, you did your own plumbing. Health and safety didn't really exist to those days. So it did mean you became highly adaptable and you were able to do a great diversity of things. Over time, like all jobs, they got more and more specialized, and we sort of got more and more industrialized, relying on chemicals. The farming has changed incredibly over the last 50 years, particularly the advent of farm chemicals, where a lot of the traditional crops have actually been bred to become, in some extent, weaker, in as much as that they haven't got such waxy stems on the outside, and the chemicals can penetrate them to kill the disease. Whereas before we relied on the waxy thing to stop the disease getting there. And so a lot of modern varieties, they do rely on chemicals all the time to keep them growing. So that's one of the real sort of big changes which has happened over the years. And with all those changes and the lack of diversity, the satisfaction went out of the job, really, to some extent. So we tended to sort of find interest outside farming, but farming related. So we would do things, weekends, we go around country shows. We joined up and helped people with cider making, steam engines, that type of thing. We got involved, we started growing some thatching straw. And then eventually we actually got quite involved in traditional fishing methods, you know, the type of small boats you would have seen around all the coasts, you know, of Britain and everywhere else, just small inshore fishing vessels, often made of wood, traditional boats and maritime interests. And that really got us set up on growing flax. Actually, I haven't introduced the fact that we grow flax, which probably might be a bit helpful for you all. So this happened about 20 years ago when we actually restored a salmon fishing boat off the River Severn, and we got very interested in the benefits of eating omega-3 oils. And we ended up working with someone called Mike Smiley, also known as the Kipper Man. He goes around and he doesn't like salmon farming, as many people don't, and think we should all directly eat fish. Anyway, we ended up talking about oily fish, which are very high in omega-3. And then we had a project which was basically called Omega-3 from Land and Sea. And as we were farmers, we looked at crops which were very high in omega-3. And that, of course, is linseed. This also coincided in a time when I was building fabric covered boats, and we were finding that cotton was tearing quite readily. So we found out that flax was a highly suitable fabric and a lot stronger. So we sort of had this sort of crazy idea of, you know, could we grow our own boat on the farm completely from wood and from fiber? And that's how we sort of started to get involved in flax growing and everything which is involved around it. And it wasn't as easy as we thought. Being in farming, we thought it'd be fairly easy to get hold of flaxseed. Rang up the seed merchants and they said no. They put us in touch with a seed breeder in France, and he said, yes, no problem, we can let you have some seed. It wasn't quite as straightforward as that. I don't think the people at the factory were quite so keen as the English start to grow flax and maybe complete with their linen, and they just put the bag of seed outside the factory and we had to get someone to go and pick it up for us. Anyway, so sort of things have progressed from there, and now we spend I finished full-time farming to devote more time to this, and we spend a lot of our time really teaching and encouraging people to become more aware of flax and its multiple benefits. Now, the way we really got involved in the biocomposite sort of side of flax is through when we started spinning. We didn't really learn to spin from anybody. We just started spinning, and our spinning was really quite incredibly rough and very open. And also, so was the weaving. I mean, this is a part of our initial probably fabric we wove. We had to ply it because it was falling apart, but we did find it would fall to bits really quite quickly if you sort of got it when pulled apart. But what we did find was when you painted it with a resin, it would hold together really well. And I think, and this is the concept of the sort of the biofabrics, where they're very low twist and very open weave, which is allowing the resin to come into them. So that's sort of really how we're sort of quite involved with the composite world. Now, what I do is I'll backtrack a bit really and let you know where we are. I'm going to take the computer for a walk around just to give you an idea of what's involved at Flaxland. I hope you can see where we're going. What I want to do is, I don't know if you can see up there, but this is in the Stroud Valleys, and that dark satanic mill is one of 50 water mills, which was actually in Stroud 100 years ago, all water powered. If you could see down that way, you'd find another 100 yards, there'd be another mill, and then another one further on. So this is a real area of strong textile production. There's no actual flax industry as ever in here. It did completely rely on the wool. So over the last years, we did get heavily involved with the composite side, and this canoe here, I don't know if you can see this. In fact, I've been working on this today. This is made with it's 99% flax fabric and resin on the hull. Obviously, the frames are all wooden. This we developed 15 years ago, and as I say, it goes back to our use of the poorly spun, very open fabrics. And we came across a company called Evolution Composites, and there was, I think then it was sort of headed by Dr. Brendan Weger, sorry. And we contacted them, and this was sort of when they started putting the fabrics in, making the fabrics to go in cars in the dashboard. And they were very interested in what we were doing. And we also got in contact with a company in Cornwall who have been making a bioresin out of linseed. So it's been epoxidized and it reacts with sunlight. So it's one part and it cures just with sunlight, or if it's pretty dull, we use a sunbed lamp. So we've been working on that for quite a while. It's interesting, we were told that it was 100% flax fabric, and anyway we ordered another little batch, and when we did our tear test we found it was a little bit weaker, and anyway, in investigation, I don't know if you've heard of when they make a yarn for textiles, they can coil wrap it, where you just draw out the threads, it's not spun at all, and you put a very thin coil around it. Anyway, they've been using polyester for that. So it wasn't 100%. And of course, but unfortunately, that did add quite a bit of strength to it. So that had been changed to a vegetable-based viscose type of fabric. But to improve the strength, we actually got them to weave a combination of the non-twist, and we had every fourth thread done as a really high twist linen, and this gave it some sort of ripstop benefit. So we sort of, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but 18, 20 years, there was quite a bit of a green revolution in a way. A lot of people were researching it, a lot of bioresins were coming out. Um, and people were really happy to work with people like, as you know, having sort of 10 liters of this here and there. And, you know, you would get the people from the company quite happy to come down and look at you busy working in a garden shed. But as they said over time, well, you know, this is all good, but we've got to sort of get the bottom line up. We need to be selling tanker loads of this. Quite a few, one company actually went into the similar market, and they got very excited, thinking they were going to bring out super glues made out of bioresins. They were even sort of discussing what type of packaging you would have this in, but unfortunately, none of that ever came to light, really, because I think we all know, you know, that is a really sort of big ask and a very difficult challenge. And with the canoes, you know, we did a business plan thinking we would sell, you know, one canoe a week or something. We're going to be able to do this all of the time. But the other trouble, and is a big thing people have got to learn at, and this is something of people's perception and acceptance. As I was saying, I was born before sort of plastics, and I well, not completely before plastics, but I remember the first plastics came out, and I don't know anyone that age, but it was always made in Hong Kong, and the plastic was about as strong as a chocolate Easter egg, and the moldings are pretty rubbish. So your homemade canoe made of fabric was quite a good competitor, but nowadays a fabric canoe is still as strong as it was 50 years ago, whereas plastics are incredibly strong. So if you want something which is going to be 100% bio and is going to sort of degrade, you've got to accept that you're going to have to change your outlook on how you use this type of whatever is made from it. For example, canoeing has changed incredibly, because now the idea is when someone goes canoeing, particularly if they're new to it, you dress them up in loads of neoprene suits, you put helmets on, GoPros, and you go crashing down rapids. And you would never have done that years ago. You would have just gone on a quiet river because you would have wrecked your boat. So we've got to, that is probably as big a challenge to do something about that as it is to create these bioresins. Interesting enough that this canoe is being made for a lecturer at Plymouth University who's working on sustainable materials, and he's just getting this for his own thing. So it's great. He's practicing what he preaches. So we're sort of really sort of quite pleased about that. I don't know if you all know, I'm sort of, I don't know where I'm jumping around quite a bit here, but never mind. We haven't got a flax industry in this country, or really a heavily established hemp industry, because the fibers are very similar but quite different in some ways. And there's a lot of people who are very keen to get this going. Here at Flaxland, I guess we're sort of doing two things. We're very keen just to get the old craft, keep the old craft alive. Well, actually, no, rejuvenate the old craft. So we get quite a lot of people who are either looking at recreating things, or actual spinners and weavers who would really love to have a home produced product. So we're sort of really looking at doing things by hand without an industry. So we've had to sort of go back pre-industrial times. So everything we do is hand spinning. And this is an example of what we would end up as an end product. This is completely hand grown and processed to get the fibers out. And these are the long line fibers. Whereas in industry, you would have a long sliver. So, you know, it's not really going to change the world in that context, but we do find there's incredible value in the social and well-being aspects of working with natural fibers. It really is projects of growing a small area and getting the community involved and people working with natural fibers has real benefits. And we help quite a few projects. I don't know if any of you've heard of Patrick Grant. He's working. They've got quite an ambitious project where they wanted to produce 200 of pairs of jeans the first year. We did advise them it might be quite hard, but this project is ongoing. So there's that project which is working towards this goal. And there's a group called the Fiber Shed set up. Quite a few groups there are working on getting smaller areas of flax growing. Lots of problems, really. Well, one big problem thrown up by Brexit was that the flaxseed wasn't put on the UK plant list. You might not be aware, but all plants have to be on a list and be certified to be sold and imported. And as flax was such a low, so few flax was grown in this country, it wasn't transferred to list. So at the moment, we're still not legally allowed to import any flaxseed into the UK. We didn't come across this until a bit too late, but I guess the benefit of it, we've been working with the main importers of linseed, and they have become quite interested in flax over the last couple of years. And the result is we're actually working with them. We're going to do a trial on 10 different flax varieties, which they're getting over from Holland on a trials license. But by next year, there will be flaxseed. It will be able to import it. So that's a real good sort of step forward. The other thing which we're really quite keen to work on, because we are in farming, and as you probably know, that the diversity of crops grown on mainstream farming, the large arable farms which you see everywhere, they sort of drop down to wheat, barley, oilseed rape, maybe something else. Linseed, which is the same species as flax, is always very low down the list. And if we could improve the value of this crop and make farmers more keen to grow it, that would be a real bonus. I mean, it would be great if people would just eat more linseed actually and use more linseed oil, but, which is the same thing as flax oil as well. It's just tends to be different names for the same thing. That would be a real great benefit. Flax isn't over hungry, even if you grow it on a conventional system for fertilizers and sprays. It's pretty resilient, so it's really good in that way, and it does make a really fantastic sort of break crop. So we are growing a lot of linseed in this country, and the unfortunate thing with that is that the straw from it nearly all goes to waste because of the fiber, because there's nowhere to use it. I've got here, so flax is split into varieties which are either grown for oil or for seed, and they're specifically grown so one has more fiber in it, one has more oil. I got to get a bit further away. I don't know if you could see the height distance differences here. So this one's flax, which is specifically for fiber, and this one is linseed, which is specifically for oil. So what will happen with most of this straw in this country, it will either be just burnt in the field, and it's a true sort of waste product when it is burnt in the field, because whereas years ago we used to burn straw in a mass over the field and the nutrition went back onto the land in one go, this has to be pushed up into a heap so it will burn quickly. So all the nutrients just in one go and everything just goes. It's got the same calorific value as sort of soft coal, but power stations and wood chip places don't like it because of the amount of fiber. Now, a few of you probably have heard of Tim Swetman. He was a person who almost set up Ecotechlin. He started using linseed straw chopped up to go in sort of fiber matting for the automotive industry. And then after a while, the French took interest in that and they've taken it over. It's over in France and they're now using sort of flax tow. But there is a real growing interest in trying to get value out of the flax straw. And with the shortage of seed, we've been actually growing that, and you will find that, I don't know if you could see this, but there's a tremendous amount of fiber in the linseed straw. And a lot depends on how well it grows, actually, as you can see from the variety difference. So there'll be actually half as much fiber in this as in the flax, in the linseed as the flax. And the seed yield is four times as much as the linseed. So if we could just get some more money out of this, this would really, because all farmers are money driven. If they thought this was the most profitable crop, they'd all be wanting to grow some of this. And that would sort of, without forcing anyone to do anything, it would be really sort of a great way of getting the industry going in this country. So the challenge is how to get it processed and make it into something useful. There has been a study done in France, and they say that if it does grow long enough, they are actually going to probably start using linseed straw as well as flax straw, maybe for some purposes, because you can process it in the same way as a long line fiber. Processing long fiber is quite complicated because however you do it, whether you do it by hand or by machine, you've got to hold one end and work the other end. Then you've got to hold this end and do that. So obviously, if it's a machine, that's quite a lot more complicated than, say, spinning and carding cotton or wool. So this is what makes flax quite difficult. And I guess hemp, if you were looking at making it into a spinning sort of textile, really. So, I mean, what I'm sort of getting around to say, I think it's highly unlikely we're going to resurrect the long line, high quality flax spinning industry in this country in a short time. I mean, this is some flax I've just spun from some really nice fiber. I mean, we're not really going to be looking at producing this type of thing, whereas we will be it's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to sort of just generally beat the fibers up and make them into a short fiber. And here, this little fluffy example, this is an example of some flax which has been processed in this country. It hasn't been put through a hammer mill. It's just been generally ripped apart. And it should all be long fibers, like the combination of long fibers and fluffy tow, but the whole lot's just been chucked into this short fiber. So you're not going to make premium linen out of this, but it's really quite suitable for composite construction. But the other great thing with this is you can blend it with wool, another sort of underutilized resource in this country. And a lot of people sort of, when we started this, and even although we've been doing it all these years, it was only sort of through our research this year we found there is actually companies doing this in this country now, which is I was talking about this earlier, and if you look up Chimera Fabrics, they're in the UK, you'll find they're blending they've got blends of flax, wool, wool, hemp. I think they're sort of nearly trying to blend anything and make a fabric. And what is quite useful with this, because it's flax and wool together makes quite a hard wearing thing, is sort of the traditional thing of cinema seats, that type of product. And it means it's got a bigger market because, in a way, I don't think we need to go over busting, sort of making more fashion clothing. So we've really got to make things which are going to be more useful, either in construction or maybe, perhaps we should change the car seats from polyester to flax wool blends and start covering them with Scotch Guard, something like that. But then, of course, I guess they aren't going to be quite as hard wearing, and that's not going to suit. But, it'd be a really good way for car industry and, all automotive to increase their renewable contents in quite a shortcut way without being too complicated. So, yeah, we're quite pleased with that project. So locally, we're going to grow some flax or linseed and get this chopped up in the same way and blend it with some local wool, so that we have then got an artisan type of yarn which we can sell to people, or people can use, and just see how sort of the market goes with that. I think yeah, I think really that sort of covers quite a lot of basically what we're up to at the moment, really. I think sort of just going, actually, particularly going back to a talk last time, we do find there's a great deal to be learned from history, from the Egyptian weaving, from spinning and weaving, you know, throughout history. And we got particularly interested in the period sort of when hand spinning and weaving turned to machine weaving and spinning. And some really interesting things for some of the museums about how the looser woven fabrics compared to the tighter ones when they're restored, the modern ones when they're very tight, when they get wet, they flax sort of spread outwards really as opposed to long ways. It expands that way when it gets wet, and when they're restoring the paintings, they ripple up and down. And this has also led us to some of the conclusions that looking at some of the linens we've bought recently. We've bought some bed sheets from sort of well, they would be Eastern Europe. You know, we've been for ages telling people if you buy a bed sheet made from flax, it's going to last you the lifetime. We bought some, we found they only lasted about 3 or 4 years. You know, the quality of a lot of modern day flax is pretty rubbish. They're probably just spinning up the short and the toe fibers and maybe poor quality flax. And we were also talking at the flower conference as well. I don't know if you're aware, but one of the process is with flax is a retting process. When it's grown, it sort of you have to get the fibers out. You have to break down the outer bark and the gums and the pectins holding the fibers together. And this is normally done by dew retting, which is a process of just sort of leaving it on the ground and it gets wet and dry and you turn it and you rely on molds and fungi. And it's pretty well known that water retting does produce a higher end fiber and it's a lot more consistent and it can be a lot more controlled. And, you know, we are wondering, and we know we have talked to a few people about this, maybe when we're looking at the very high end, very technical composites, whether, you know, water retting could have a place for specialized fabrics. And I think this, particularly now we've got things like biodigesters, and as we're talking about the methane plants, this type of thing, it could fit very well in with a farm sort of factory industry, because obviously the water, when you water ret, is a bacterial action, is very polluting. It can't go into a watercourse, but obviously it's very nutritious. But if you've got the biodigester, you've got all these facilities for recirculating or, you know, spreading the nutrient on the land. That can be a way forward. And we now we're doing a bit of water retting, just using basically an immersion heater, sort of a water cylinder from a house, because we, as I said, we got this old book from the 1940s, and it's all about pollution and water retting. When the Second World War came along, we had to resurrect the flax industry for the fiber, and they were looking at how to improve retting and to reduce the pollution by bubbling air through it. So it might be sort of a niche area which the UK could develop the flax industry in, I think. I think that sort of covers most of what I've got to sort of say on the newer areas of things. In terms of what we do with the courses and things, it's basically you come down here and you just do things on a bench, and then we go outside and we use some sort of pre-industrial revolution tools, and you know, you get a real good understanding of the fiber. we're also really keen I think if anyone's doing these fibers and wants to get involved in a way, it's really good to have some hands-on experience. And certainly if you're going to have a go, the things you really got to concentrate on is retting, getting that right. And I think you really need to know how to spin because of all the complications in spinning flax, really. And one of the things which we've done just to make it a lot easier is we actually make our own sliver by laying fibers basically down a gutter and spreading them out randomly and drawing them out. And then you can hang the fibers over a distaff which has got pipes on it to slow the speed. And we found that actually has improved our hand spinning by about sort of 50%, where you can spin a lot more consistently and a lot quicker. And it's quite interesting because we haven't really come across sort of working with fibers that way before. So yeah, that's about all, I think.